Alright, so day one of E3 has ended, and this video is, of course, for the Microsoft conference, the first one we get every year at E3. And these are, of course, my top five things that I enjoyed at the convention, plus I'll have some honorable mentions in there. And coming from last year, Microsoft had a lot to make up for, and I feel like they did a pretty good job. I mean, I believe it was about a month or so ago, a couple weeks, they announced the $100 decrease in the price for the Xbox One. Basically, it just comes without Kinect now because they all came with Kinect. So they kind of lost that in last year's E3 whole console war, which company won. And it was, of course, between Microsoft and Sony because Nintendo already had the Wii U, PS4, Xbox One, who was going to make it work, and it was PlayStation. So Microsoft had a little bit to come back from, and personally, I think they did pretty well. They had a lot of good content. Whenever they do good, they always do really good to me. They always, whenever it's done well, it's like here's what's first on Xbox One, which I personally hate because it's like crap. I know it's one of those things that makes you have to buy one. Or here's what's exclusively on Xbox One, which makes it worse because they show good games and it makes you want that system, which costs hundreds of dollars that I don't have. But good conference as far as I saw, or as far as I'm concerned. So my top five, and I have to read off my list, especially for this first one. But the first one is the Super Ultra Dead Rising 3 Arcade Remix Hyper Edition EX Plus Alpha, the DLC announcement that they did. And one of the things, there are actually a couple things that made this cool. First off, it was hilarious because, of course, with the title, they made fun of themselves for the Super Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter for Super Ultra, whatever it was, the very last one, Hyper, or I think it was just Ultra Street Fighter 4. So they made fun of themselves for that, and the Ultra Street Fighter 4 came out about a week or two ago, I believe, or maybe three. So they're making fun of themselves for that. The trailer itself was actually really good. It was cool to see the ton of mini games that they had in there, and that had me curious about how it connects to Dead Rising 3, which is one of the reasons it's also good because even though I don't have an Xbox One, that was really the only game I wanted to buy for Xbox One was Dead Rising 3 because I love the Dead Rising franchise. So it was like Dead Rising 3, that was the game I wanted. And then they had this really amazing DLC to this game that has four-player co-op, which as far as I know, that isn't in Dead Rising 3. It's only two-player co-op like in Dead Rising 2. But they have four-player co-op. I don't know if it's sort of its own standalone thing. That's how it seems with kind of the character Nick going up to the arcade cabinet. So it's unfortunate that you can't do that stuff in the real game, but I'm assuming there's so much content within it that even though it doesn't carry over into the story, like you can change the costumes and get like Hadoukens and stuff like that from Street Fighter, it'll still be enough content there. Plus, it'll be four players, where even if it's not in the full single player so to speak campaign, it's still worth it and it's still fun to be able to actually experience that, even if it's only in this DLC. And the one thing I'm really worried about is whether or not the pricing for it is good, which yet another great thing they did. They announced that it's actually out now, which I love how they did. It was like available soon, but sooner than soon, it's out now. So that was just another reason why that was a great trailer. It's DLC, which is clearly a big DLC. I mean, they have the costume changes, and it's for the 31st anniversary edition. So they really went all out, and it wasn't just like here's some famous people. It was like here's a bunch of freaking Capcom stuff. They had Onimusha 4 costume I saw. They had Regina from Dino Crisis, which like blew my mind. I was like, they really, really went back in time to get some of the most famous stuff they got. So they did that. They had Tofu, who is, if you don't know, a character from Resident Evil 2, where it's just a giant thing of tofu, and all you do is basically run through this mode, and it's kind of like the time trial mode, basically, where you go from point A to point B, and excuse me, you get points, I believe. But when you play as Tofu, all you get is a knife. So you're just defenseless. You're a piece of tofu. And they put a mode called Tofu mode in Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles to pay homage to that. And that also takes place during the Resident Evil 2 campaign. So that was really amazing. They had one thing that really has me excited, and I can't wait to see the costume for whichever characters they picked from the franchise. But they had a poster in the background that said Power Stone, And for anyone who doesn't know what Power Stone is, it was kind of like the first version of Smash Brothers, I guess. I'm not sure if Smash Brothers came out first. Smash Brothers probably did because it was in 64, and Power Stone was Dreamcast. But Power Stone is an amazing game, especially the second one because they upgraded everything that was good in the first game. And those were, that franchise, especially the second one because that's what I like more. That franchise was something I wanted to get a remake. I didn't necessarily want it to have a third installment, which still would have been good, but they had 1 and 2, and then they recreated both of those in the Power Stone collection, which unfortunately was only on PSP, and it was it was Power Stone 1 and 2, and they added like a couple levels, and I think you could play as some of the bosses in the game. But that never came to consoles, and I'd probably still buy it today because that was just the big thing. It was before Smash Brothers was huge, for me at least. It was Power Stone, and that junk was just amazing. So I can't wait to see which characters they brought from that. One that I can think in my head, I believe her name was Ayame. She's like the ninja character, and her cool special attack was she threw like giant shuriken. I'd love to see that in Dead Rising, just like chopping down zombies with giant shuriken. But it was a really cool trailer. I love all the content that's in it. It makes me want Dead Rising 3 even more, unfortunately. It was cool to see the other characters come back, Frank and Chuck. And they had a female character, Annie. I don't know if she's in Dead Rising 3. Of course, if you have the game, you can let me know. And if you have an Xbox One, of course, you definitely put below how much it does actually cost so we know whether or not this thing is actually, they poke fun at it, but they did it right. Or if they poke fun at it and then they still charge a ton of money and they're going to make people hate them anyway, even though they had an amazing trailer and they made it seem like it was going to be a ton of great content that was actually already finished and not available soon. But that's number 5 for me. I definitely loved it. Great cameos by I guess it technically weren't cameos, they were costumes, but great references to old franchises that they've had. Like I said, the Dino Crisis thing really blew me away because, like I said, they really went back. Like anything from Resident Evil or Street Fighter is like, yeah, that's a given. They have to have something from Resident Evil and something from Street Fighter because those are like 2 of the big ones, and they already have Mega Man stuff in Dead Rising. So like those 3 are kind of the big ones where it's like if there's not a costume from Street Fighter or not a costume from Resident Evil, it's kind of hard to say that this is like a true anniversary collection, even if it's only one costume and it is the tofu, which I think is actually kind of perfect because it's so silly. But that was definitely my number 5 because I really, really loved it, and it makes me want to get an Xbox One even more because now I really want to get Dead Rising 3 so I can get this just insane DLC and fight a giant zombie bison. Number 4 for me was the Halo collection, which for me, and it's probably the same way for a lot of other fans, I never really got into Halo when it initially came out. I didn't even have an Xbox when the first Halo game came out, or the second one, I don't think I had one either. But I got an Xbox 360, and of course I had an Xbox before that, but I played Halo 1 one time with my cousin, and I have like 2 memories from that, or maybe 3. I punched one of the little enemies. I should know the name because I've seen so many videos on them. But I punched one of those little enemies. I had trouble dealing with the shields because of them. I fought those little big head things that were in like this weird creepy section, and we spun around on the ice because I couldn't figure out the camera actually controlled where the way the car turned. So we spun on the ice a little bit, and that's all I have from the first Halo until like 2 years ago, and I played a little multiplayer with some friends of mine. But this collection has the first 4, or at least the first 4 numbered games of the Halo franchise, and I thought that was amazing. As soon as they announced Halo 5, all I was thinking, even when they announced the anniversary edition for the first Halo, I was like, man, I wish they would come out with a collection because it's Halo. It's such a huge franchise. It's weird that they didn't do that already because they have 4, which is technically the beginning of the second saga. You would think they would have had the collection come out with 3, and then it's like you get 1, 2, and 3, and then here's the beautiful new saga that you can enjoy. But it was cool to see that they put it with, the first 3 with 4, and we also get a new version of 2 because that was another thing that made me think maybe I ought to get the first game because that did come out on 360, and it was like it would be cool to get this because it would let me enjoy the first Halo game and I get the story and I get everything from it. and I get to have amazing graphics and not just the old stuff. And I was like, man, if I bought this, I'd have to go back to Halo 2, and it would look kind of sucky. And then Halo 3 would be fine because it was on 360, but it'd be like it would kind of suck, and it would just mess me up. Plus, I'm really OCD about used games, but it was just like it would suck to have to go back to that. And I was like, I kind of want to wait and see when they'll make a collection because, like I said, it's Halo. Why don't we have one? And now we do. So that was really cool. We get all 4 games. We get Halo 2 Anniversary Edition, so that's been upgraded as well. We get Halo 3. We get Halo 4. We also get the beta for Halo 5, which I thought was cool, as well as I guess the newest. I think they called it a series, but since you'd have it all together, you'd probably watch it just like a movie. But we have the second live action Halo thing that we're gonna get, and I saw Forward Unto Dawn. If you haven't seen that, it's unbelievably well made. You can watch it on Netflix. It's on there. So if you haven't seen that, check it out, and it'll probably give you an indication how serious they are about making live action Halo stuff. Like that was one of the things where if that came out in the movies, it'd be like, this is a good video game movie. That could have been one of them if they did it that way. But that was a great franchise, or that was a great series, and I'm pretty sure this one will come out really well too. But it was cool to see the collection. It's great that we get a new version of the second game as well. So the first and second have updated graphics, and then we can just have cool graphics all the way through. Not to mention, every version of multiplayer is up in its original form, which kind of blew my mind. I thought that would just be done for, and it would kind of just be, I don't know what I was thinking, but it was great to hear that, even though I probably won't play too much of the old stuff, and maybe I will just to go through all the different games, and you could see like, oh, this is where this changed, and that's where that changed. And for diehard fans who still feel like this is worth the purchase, they can go back and it'll be a way for them to actually play those old maps, and they could see them. And I would assume that in the first 2 games, since they've been redone, you can still do the switching between the new graphics and the old graphics, even in multiplayer. Definitely let me know below, because I have no idea. I don't think I've ever actually looked that up, but it'll be cool to do that too. And you get every version of multiplayer as it initially was, and I believe they said dedicated servers. And for anyone who doesn't know why that matters to like nerdy people like myself, it just means it's fair. Like if you host a game, you have like a slight advantage. Like your connection is technically better than anybody else's because it's coming from your internet and is going out to other people. So dedicated servers make it even for everyone. So that was really cool to see, and I'm excited for that to come out. And once again, that was one of the great things they showed that makes me want an Xbox One. And it's also, for anyone who didn't catch the price, it is $60. It'll be the price of a normal game, which isn't bad. Like, you might think it kind of sucks for all the games, but if you bought 4 by itself, I'm pretty sure that's still about $40 or $50, something like that. I don't know, but it's a great price. It's probably the only way to even get the anniversary edition of the second game anyway, but definitely a cool collection. Interesting how they have it where everything's unlocked from the very beginning. I thought that was weird, but at the same time, it's really cool. And it's also how they set up the little playlist thing. I thought that was genius. I thought it'll be cool to have that, and it'll probably go out to everyone where it's like you make your own set list and put it out there. Like it goes from this level in 1 to this level in 4, and then 2, and then 3, and then back to 1 and stuff like that. So that'll be exciting to see when that actually comes out as well. But excited for the Halo collection. It's cool to finally have that collection, and it's such a huge franchise. It does actually deserve one. So now we finally have it, and that has me excited. For number 3, definitely Sunset Overdrive. It was announced last year. Hilarious trailer. Insomniac Games, they make great stuff. Resistance Games, Ratchet and Clank, which is probably more popular, but definitely more popular. But I was excited for this game. I thought this looks really cool. It's over the top. It's silly like the games that they do, but at the same time, it's gory without being super gory because you're killing all these creatures and they just kind of explode into orange goo. So it was cool to see the traversal, the weapons that were insane, and we got a really precise demo, which I actually loved about that. They showed us like, hey, here's a new trailer, or it was sort of a trailer, sort of gameplay, And so they have the new trailer with this new character, which I was hoping, because I initially thought it was just you play as one specific character, but you just make the characters look how you want to, which I was glad to hear, because I was like, I hope they didn't change the look of the initial character, because I like the look of that character way better than the one in the little opening they have for this conference. But you get to make characters however you want them to look, male or female. And they went through, it was a funny opening, and then we got our precise little gameplay, which basically they focused on the fact that all the insane traversal we get to see in the trailers, where they're like hanging off of zip lines with crowbars and jumping and grinding on rails with their shoes, that's real stuff. So that's in-game content. And it was so precise, it was insane. Like, he bounced on some trampolines, skate, bounce, skate, land on the roller coaster, skate around, kill some aliens, killed the enemies in like the little castle. We also, guess, technically got introduced to the fact that there are humans that just, they want to take over because things are going crazy. Like, hey, I can rule. That happens in post-apocalyptic worlds. So we do have human enemies. And there was a video I saw a while ago on a lot of the other content. Like, when you die, the way you respawn is really cool. You'll come out of like a coffin, like a mummy. They had a spaceship drop the character off one time, and there was another time where a van drove up, and there was one of the monsters driving the van, and then another monster opened the door and like pushed the character out, and they just sped off. I thought that was really funny. But the game looks good, the action looks cool. We got to see a couple weapons. I heard on the game trailers coverage that the weapon, the amount of weapons is close to the highest that Ratchet and Clank has ever had, which I have to assume is a lot. And even if it's not, the weapons they have in this game are really cool. They have the vinyl record thing. They have like the nuke gun, and it was cool to see that when certain weapons went off and killed certain enemies, they would do like comic book effects, or it would say like freeze or pop and stuff like that. So I enjoyed actually getting to see real gameplay of Sunset Overdrive. And I also saw on the game trailers coverage that they have 4-player co-op, where one of the modes is like protect your base of operations. That was really cool too. So I'm really excited for that game. It looked cool in the trailer. It's still just as insane and silly during gameplay, so it has me really excited. I was glad to see some hands-on stuff with that, where we see people actually playing it, and they did it really well. They showed the traversal, like you can get from point A to point B in what felt like 10 seconds. He was just bouncing and skating all the way through, and it shows how you can play the game your own way. And you can go through guns blazing if you have a bunch of ammo, or you just want to do that, or you can be silly and just skate around enemies and shoot them up. So that was really cool to see. For number 2 were the new IPs, one of which was done by Platinum Games, who I personally think is one of the greatest developers ever, because they make some of the most over the top stuff I've ever played. They do Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2, which I can't wait to finally see and hopefully play. They did the Wonderful 101, which is on the Wii U as well, and they've done several other games, but the other most notable one, in my opinion, is Metal Gear Rising. So if you play any of those games, or you've seen them, you know these people don't exactly do subtle gameplay. It's over the top, like almost anime style attacks, where you're a ninja cutting through people and buildings and stuff, or you're a witch who can slow down time and do like 20 hits on an enemy that can't fight back, and it looks beautifully well done. So I'm excited for their new game, Scalebound. It was interesting to see, because based on the trailer, it looks more grounded, so to speak. Like, it seems more typical, I guess. So I'm sure it won't be that, and that's what has me excited for what they're going to do in this world. And the character was cool. I thought he would just have the arm that was weird. I didn't know it was scales, but then it becomes armor around his body, and it kind of makes me think of the anime Berserk. So if anyone knows that, then we probably thought the same thing. But he gets the armor, and then he has a dragon, and you think he's about to fight these 2 dragons, and then one of them is actually his dragon, and his dragon actually matched the color of his arm. So I think certain characters, and it could be in the single player thing, where certain characters have certain abilities and stuff like that. So that would be cool. And with the other dragons coming in at the end of this trailer, it kind of makes it seem like we could possibly get co-op online, which I think would be really cool. And I believe one of the creatures they showed would kind of burst through some rocks or something like that. I don't think that one can fly, so we obviously get more than just dragons. and at the end they had like a whole crazy Hydra thing going on anyway. So I'm excited for that one. That was a cool new IP. The other one is by the people who did Limbo, and it's called Inside, and it was kind of jokingly called Limbo 2 because it is fairly similar to Limbo in its feel and style, and just has more color. But that one looked really cool. It was very interesting to see. I loved how it was sort of a dystopian future, and I'm curious as to how they're going to tell this story, if it'll be the same as to what Limbo was, which really I think all the story was kind of like in the description that you would get if you looked up the game, and there was really nothing else in the game that told a story. It was just, you know, you were captured and you solved these puzzles, then you get to the end and it's over, which I really hope they continue that in some way. And with the way it ended, and I won't spoil it, it does seem like they were building up to a Limbo 2, so I hope they do that as well. But this one seems interesting. Dystopian future is like people are kind of drones. They had the scene where the kid was like fake walking with all the other people who were like dazed and messed up. So I'm excited to see how that game plays out for sure. And it seems like it won't be as creepy as Limbo was, where it's just creepy giant spiders and silhouettes of crazy things. But it'll get pretty intense because there was a scene, if I remember right, where the kid was running from a dog. So it'll be cool, and I'm curious to see how gruesome they get with it, because in Limbo everything was just dark. So when you got like stabbed by a giant spider, it was like, that's messed up, but it wasn't like blood was coming out or anything. And in this, there's technically color, so I'm curious to see how they sort of balance it, if they're going to give it a more mature tone, because I think Limbo was rated mature technically too, even though there was no blood. It might have been teen, but this one, you know, if the kid gets crushed like a pancake, I don't think like white ink is going to come out, or black ink. But I don't know why I said white ink, but anyway, that was a cool new IP, and there were some others, and I guess technically the Project Spark thing is a new IP, and that one was really interesting. It was sort of a Little Big Planet type of game, but far more advanced, where it had like full body people. That one has me curious. I want to look that up because it made it seem like you could just download it right now based on that trailer, but I'm curious about that. I think it looks really cool. It seemed like you could do so much in the game, just like in Little Big Planet, but even more. And I'm curious to see how that one takes off too. And you know, those are the three big IPs. They're new IPs that I really enjoyed seeing, even though I feel like we really only saw a lot of Spark and Inside. And of course, Scalebound was really just the first initial trailer that we got. And before I get to my number one, I have a few honorable mentions. The first is sort of the indie bundle, I guess, so to speak, which is where they showcase that new indie games are coming out, which I think Microsoft tends to do all the time because they are kind of the leading console as far as indie games being put on the system. So they had a ton of games showed off, and I thought that was really cool, and that's why it's an honorable mention, because it was just a bunch of games, and you see them. It was like, I always try to read the titles, but it was cool to see all those new games. It didn't really stop and focus on anything, which is why it's an honorable mention. It was really cool. It was nice to see, and it's like, it's good to just see indie games. Like, I might not really even buy any of these games. It's just one of the things that I actually enjoy. Like, other people who are nerdy like me get to live out their dream, and you know, they make games and they get showcased at E3. So that was a cool one, and it's always cool to see them do the showcase where it's just like, that looks cool, I like that, 8-bit, 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 all good. So that was an honorable mention for me that I really enjoyed. And also Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I was about to say Warfighter, but Call of Duty has never been that huge for me. I always loved the story, to be completely honest. Single player is what I like. That might just blow some people's minds, but I always loved the single player more than multiplayer, and it was because the stories are well done. It's insanely over the top. You're like crashing through buildings and still trying to survive and stuff, compared to multiplayer where it's like you just run around the building and shoot each other. So I always like the single player more than multiplayer. And this one seemed really interesting, and they always have a trailer, or they always have a demo, and they do the same thing every year. They show off the demo, then they do in interest of time, they skip to a more interesting point. And this demo, what makes an honorable mention for me is that, like I said, not incredibly excited for it. Graphics looked amazing, but what really got me was the demo and how different it was compared to the other ones. This one had a lot of the same aspects, here's some of the cool weapons we have, like they did with Black Ops, where it was like, these are some of the cool things the guns can do. They showed off how you could switch through the grenades, and they showed off the smart grenade, and what I guess you could kind of call the sonar grenade. I didn't actually look at what the title was for that one, but it showed where all the enemies were. They had the little drone thing where you just walk up to it and basically attach your gun to it, and then you can lower it to shoot people. I thought that was cool too. And the thing that really made this an honorable mention, or even worth mentioning as far as I'm concerned, is the ending to the demo, which is where one of your teammates actually dies during the demo in this explosion because his arm gets caught, and the ship blows up, and then a piece flies towards you. Now, initially, I just thought, oh, it hit the person in the chest, so he's going to be dragged away. Real simple. And then I guess the CO, which is like the commanding officer, I don't know if that's what you would technically call him, but he starts carrying you away, and then you realize that this guy didn't get like hit in the chest with a piece of metal. His arm got chopped off, and you're being dragged away, and you have like an arm laying on the ground. And I thought, they've never done anything that dramatic before in these demos. It's always just, here's an amazing action scene in the game that you'll really love. And I like the tone that they took with the end of this, and that's why I enjoyed it so much, because it was like, it looks cool, I like the cool weapons, I'm not gonna buy it, but it looks nice. And then it's like, this guy died in the demo, and your arm got chopped off. So it was an amazing ending to that trailer, which did all the typical Call of Duty stuff that they have, and also the weird swarm of drones. That made me interested in what was going on in that scene. It just looked really crazy, but that was also pretty cool too. And then my number one, which, you know, I'd like to say this because it's probably going to piss a lot of people off, or like a couple of people, because no one's going to watch this, but this is my personal opinion. And for me, number one was honestly Assassin's Creed Unity, because I love the Assassin's Creed franchise. It's always been one of my favorites ever since the first one. I love the second one, like pretty much everybody did, because it was one of the great video game sequels. And then after that, they come out year after year, and it was like, you know, there were cool things here and there. The first one after 2, which I don't remember the name of, they added guns, because technically it was like 30 years later or whatever. And it was like, oh, that blew my mind, because it was like, they have cannons and they have guns and stuff. That was really cool to me. And then they added like the new mechanic where you could like throw an axe at somebody, and they had the cool moves where you could swing like staff or spears around. And then they had Brotherhood, where you could recruit assassins, which was really cool, but that was the only thing. And then Revelations, which I don't really remember what they added in Revelations. It was just like old Ezio, and he had a hook thing. That was about all I remember they added. They added the thing no one liked. That's what they added, the sort of tower defense stuff, which personally I enjoyed, but pretty much everyone else hated that, so it disappeared after that game. And then 3 came out, and it was like, here's snow, and here are new parkour mechanics and new ways to take out enemies, more realistic stuff. That was cool. And then 4 came out, and they just expanded on the naval stuff, which was amazingly well done. And then they have this game where one of the big things, and some stuff they mentioned, some stuff they didn't. The big thing, of which of course they did mention, was 4-player co-op during single player, and that just, like, that was it for me. I was just like, that was the one thing that kind of had me gasping. I was like, they didn't do that, and they did, and it was amazing. And also something that they didn't mention was how detailed this world is, and how much exploration there really is. Really caught me off guard. Like, the place they went into to kill this target was unbelievably huge. They had multiple levels in this place. Like, they went through the second floor, I guess, or whichever floor it was, and then the character that they were focusing on, he went out the window and went up the stairs, or he went out the window and climbed up the building and went through another window on the upper level. And when he got in, the other 3 characters were just right there. Like, they went up a different way, because that's Assassin's Creed. You can go wherever you want. And they could have just walked up the stairs like it was nothing. And it was really cool to see that this place was so huge. And also, even before they got into the castle, and this was something I believe they took out in 4, were sort of the transition houses, so to speak, where in Assassin's Creed 3, you would jump through a house, and Connor would jump through a window, sort of slide over a table, jump through another window, and then it would help you escape whoever's chasing you. I believe they took that out in 4, and if they didn't, then I completely missed that part. But they put that in this game in a way because he went through the window, and I think they did that on purpose because that's what we kind of know it from his 3, where you go through and that's your transition and escape. And then he went through and he stopped, and it was just a room. He was just in a big freaking room with some woman and some guy, and he was just walking around, and there's stuff to do in that room. And of course that's the demo, so I don't know how many areas in the game are like that, but that was a lot of detail. That room had detail. It had people in it, and the castle they went to had detail. It was multiple levels, and it was just really cool to see. And I actually like the look. I thought at first it was simplistic. I was like, it's just like blue, and he has like a glove or something. And I was like, well, I kept watching. I thought that actually looks pretty cool, and it feels like there's a lot more customization to the characters, and as far as single player goes, because the other characters who came in didn't just have like, oh, he has the Venice cloak on, so it's like black and white, and then you have like the Tuscan cloak on, so it's blue and white. It wasn't like that. They were very different characters, and I feel like that brings in more customization to single player, especially with the way the game goes. You don't really focus as much on the single player the like assassin single player character anymore. It's like you're the person going into this world. So it looks like there's going to be a lot more customization, which I'd love to see in that game, where you can really change the look. They also had a tiny thing was the parkour move where he would get off of a ledge and go down. He sort of did like a weird spin to get off, which seemed unnecessary. He could have just jumped down, but they added like a little trick spin in there when he would climb down. I thought that was interesting too. But 4-player co-op is what makes this my number one for the Microsoft conference, because it's Assassin's Creed 4-player co-op in single player. It's not just, oh, we're 4 people, let's go find these 4 people, and the multiplayer that we've had since the beginning. This is new in-game multiplayer and single player campaign multiplayer, and which doesn't make sense, but you know what I meant. But it makes it amazing, and it changes so much of the game, because even in single player with all of these games, it's like I could go up this building over here, or I could do that building, or I could just go straight in, shoot some people, swing some swords, and kill the person I need to kill. And now it's 2 of you, so you could both take a building, or both go straight, or one goes straight and like distracts everyone. The other person goes and stealth kills this person, and then it even changes when you have 3 people. That way, whoever goes in the center doesn't get defeated, and then you have 4 people, and it changes it every single time, because it's like, do we all want to just go crazy and make this look cool, and we all just walk in slow and just take everybody out, or do we all just want to split up and work together? That way, when we join up in the center, we've just like inadvertently killed anyone who would have gotten each other's way. Like I kill a guy on the roof, that inadvertently saves one of my partners from being spotted by the guy that was on the roof. And it changes stuff like that in the gameplay. And we even got to see it where one of the characters gets spotted, and he's like, the guy's about to sound the alarm, and then another assassin just comes out of a room and kills that guy. And that's one of the big things that changes it. Like it's harder to get caught when you're working as a team. So I'm really excited for that. I also love, and this is, I guess, sort of honorable mention, the guy that got distracted by the woman walking past him was one of the funniest things I saw. Like the trailer for the New Dead Rising DLC was the funniest thing I saw. Sunset Overdrive was the second funniest, and the third funniest was that guy getting distracted in the demo, because he was walking, and he just stopped like, look at her right there, and then he got stabbed in the neck and he was murdered. But that was hilarious to me. But I'm really excited for the rest of this E3. Check out the description below, because I'm going to do another video where I do my top 5 for the EA press conference, and I will most likely be doing some other top 5 videos for the rest of the conferences that come up, and I might do some other random E3 videos, since we have an amazing week of video games coming up. But thanks for checking this out, and of course, put your top 5 below for what you saw in the Microsoft conference, your honorable mentions if you want to, or top 10 if you just loved everything. put what you love below. And just thanks for watching and enjoy E3 because that's the best time of the year.